Hey everybody, so the last time I sat here and talked to you guys was about 2 months ago when I was explaining my trout fishing setup at lakes. And since then, this summer has been a bit of a struggle, so I decided to take a bit of time off. For the very first time since I started YouTube in 2006, I finally forgot about filming for a little bit and just kind of took it easy, and I wanted to regroup so we can start over again during the fall salmon season. So it is September 3rd, and they just announced the Tidal Fraser River pink salmon fishing opening, which is very, very exciting. This is one fishery that I have been pushing for every 2 years because I think it is a very family-friendly fishery. It's a great fishery for people who want to get into salmon fishing. When I first moved into Canada, the pink salmon is the first species I encountered down at the Fraser River. I thought it was so much fun. These fish are aggressive, there's lots of them, so it's easy to get into them. You can fish for them properly, learn how to cast and retrieve spoons and jigging and different techniques without foul hooking them. So yeah, so I'm really excited that we finally are getting an opening. The return this year is roughly around 6 million fish. That sounds like a lot of fish for one single river, but in comparison to historic average, which is about 12 million fish, it is not that high. It's only about 50% of the historic average, but we are getting an opening regardless. So the Tidal Fraser River runs from the railway bridge in Mission down to the Fraser River mouth, and this entire stretch is open for pink salmon fishing, and you can keep them as well between September 3rd and September 18th during this 2-week period, so which is excellent. Now, I've been getting a lot of questions on Facebook and Instagram from people who want to know how to catch them, when to catch them, where to catch them. So here we are. I've done a similar videos about 10 years ago, so I thought, well, let's do another one. Let's do a revised version of the pink salmon fishing setup. So the very first thing we're going to do is go over the fishing rods that I like to use, which have changed over the years, and I'll explain to you why there are so many different ones and which ones I prefer and which ones are fine but not necessarily my preference. Yeah. So the pink salmon that come back to the Fraser River, they weigh roughly between 2 and 6 pounds on average. You certainly can get fish up to 8 pounds, 10 pounds if you're very, very lucky, but generally between that 2 and 6 pound range. So they're not very big, and you definitely don't need very, very heavy tackle to catch them. When I first started out, I actually started out using a spinning setup, the light spinning setup like this one. This particular rod is rated between 2 and 6 pound test. It certainly works, but over the years I find that the fish put a lot of strains on this particular rod over time, and the fight time on each fish it's quite long, and I feel that while this is fun, I feel this is not really responsible. If you're doing catch and release fishing, you should go with something slightly heavier. So this particular rod is 6 feet long. It's mostly designed for trout, so weighted between 2 and 6 pound test, trout and bass. It's okay for pink salmon, but my recommendation is to go a little higher. Okay. So now we're going to go to the other extreme, which is this particular rod right here. So this is a Shimano Clarise. The length is 9.5 feet long. It's rated between 8 and 12 pound test. This is your typical salmon and steelhead spinning rod. It's great for cold salmon. You can catch Chinook salmon and chum salmon on this as well. Certainly this works for pink salmon as well, but it's slightly bit of an overkill. But if you only have enough money to spend on one spinning rod for salmon, this would be the one you want to go with because it pretty much covers all of the species that you want to target. Yeah, so once you finish fishing for pink salmon with this rod, which you can bring them in pretty easily. You can use it for the other salmon species later on, which we got coho salmon coming up in October. We got some Chinook salmon coming up in the next few weeks as well, and chum salmon in November as well. So yeah, so this is a good rod, good all-around rod to go with if you only want to get one rod. And you know what? We also use this rod for jigging in the ocean for Chinook salmon as well. So it's kind of like a multi-purpose spinning rod. My favorite setup for pink salmon over the years, and actually for coho salmon in that 2 to 10 pound range, is this spinning rod right here. This is my go-to spinning rod. So the Shimano Clarise 9 foot long, rated between 6 and 10 pound test. It's fantastic. It's light, it's flexible, but it just has enough backbone to bring all the big fish as well. I've caught chum salmon with this as well, but it's a little under weight for the chum salmon, but definitely fantastic for pink and coho salmon. This is a rod I recommend. Unfortunately, this particular Clarise rod, it has been discontinued, 6 to 10 pound test. But G.Loomis, on the other hand, has the exact same spinning rod rating, which this one is 6 to 10 pound test as well. It's G.Loomis E6X, 9 foot long. I love the E6X lineup, and it's pretty much very similar to the other one, except it's slightly more sensitive. I noticed the tip, it's a little thinner, it's a little lighter. The handle, it's a little skinnier as well, which is easier on your hands. And I actually just got this rod sent to me not very long ago, so I'm really excited to be using this particular one this year. So this would be great for pink salmon coming up in the next few weeks, and also for coho salmons as well. So all the rods that I've been, except the very first one, all of the rods that I've experienced so far has all been around 9 feet long. So these are great for casting, retrieving spoons and spinners. If you want to do some jigging, if you want to twitch jigs, you want to go with something a little shorter. So this Shimano Clarise, which is not discontinued, it's 6.5 feet long. It's rated between 4 and 10 pound test. So this rod is pretty fantastic. I've taken this rod to the Yukon territory for northern pikes. I've used this for bass, for smallmouth bass, which is great. It's a little too fast for trout, but it works. But and because this is a faster rod, which means it's a stiffer rod, it's great for twitching jigs. And this is the rating is perfect for pink salmon and coho salmon as well. I was twitching jigs for coho salmon with this rod. And I was really happy with it. It's light, and unlike some of the other twitching salmon rods that you find on the market, it's very light because primarily it is designed for trout. But yeah, it's nice. So if you want to get but you can also use this for spin casting spoons and spinners as well. Just because it's shorter doesn't mean you can't do you can't cast and retrieve spoons and spinners with this. I definitely prefer to use something a little longer for casting, retrieving spoons and spinners, because I feel that with the longer rod I can get the light lure a little further out than the shorter rod. So that's kind of like the advantage of the longer rod compared to the short one. So okay, so that's kind of the rod lineup, and that's why you end up getting so many different rods, because they all have their own individual advantages and purposes. So the reel, it's pretty standard. So for any coho salmon, pink salmon, I like to go with the Shimano 2500 size reels. So this is a Shimano Stradic, fantastic smooth reel, and the line got tight. Yeah, there you go. It is very smooth. Trust me on that. So this is a very smooth reel. My go-to reel for spinning for salmon is this one. 2500 size. It's just the right size for pink salmon. This is more of a high-end spinning reel. You can get a Shimano Naski as well, like this one right here, which is quite a bit cheaper, but it's still very, very nice. This one is more durable. It stands better in the saltwater situation. So if you're fishing the Tidal Fraser River, which the water is a mix between salt and fresh water, perhaps you want to go with this one. There's quite a bit of siltation going on in the Tidal Fraser as well. So you want to try to keep all the silt off your reel. So you might want to go with something like a Shimano Stradic. So yeah, so this goes well with all of the rods that I explained to you earlier. And this is spooled with PowerPro, 15-pound PowerPro braided line. I personally have been enjoying using braided line for the last, I'd say, 7 years. I used to use monofilament. I would put 8-pound monofilament on this. There's quite a bit of stretch, and you know what? Again, fishing the Tidal Fraser where it's very, very silty, braid is, I feel like it's definitely the way to go, and because it definitely withstands the conditions of the Fraser River better than monofilament. I find that I tend to change my mono once a year, whereas the braid, I can leave it on here for several years and it's still just fine. At the end of the braided line, you want to tie a section of a monofilament or fluorocarbon. My preference is Seaguar, 12-pound Seaguar fluorocarbon line onto the end. So I would tie roughly around 6 feet of this to the end as the leader before I attach the lure to the leader. Fluorocarbon doesn't stretch as much as monofilament, so I find that when you do set the hook, you can get a really good hook set with that, much better than monofilament. So 12-pound test. So you're probably asking, well, the fish are only between 2 and 6 pounds, maybe 8, maybe 10. So why 12 pounds? Well, again, if you're fishing in the Tidal Fraser where it's very, very silty, it can be snaggy on the bottom as well. Quite often your line does rub against rocks, and over time you can get a fair amount of abrasion happens. So I tend to go with something a little heavier. And because the water clarity is not that great in the Fraser River as well, a good water visibility in the Fraser right now, it will be 2 feet, that much. So having slightly thicker line, which 12-pound fluoro, it's not very thick in the first place, the fish wouldn't see it anyway. So sensitivity is not really in play over here. You can definitely go with something a little thicker, 12 pound or sometimes even 15. So you know what, when I fish for coho or chum, I will go up to 15 pound as well. But 12, it's kind of like the standard leader I would use to go with pink salmon spinning. Okay, so let's talk about lures. What are we going to do with lures, okay? So I like to carry a box like this. This is the great thing about pink salmon fishing. You know, you got your rod, you got your reel, you got your line spooled in your reel. All you got to do is carry this, a box of lures, and you're fishing. You don't really need anything else. You want to keep your setup as simple as possible. So typical lure you want to use is a 1/4 ounce spoon, like that. Okay, 1/4 ounce spoons work really well. It gets you the distance, the casting distance you want it to where the fish are. You know, you're fishing in relatively shallow water as well, so you don't want that lure to be sinking too much. Anything heavier, 1/2 ounce, will be too heavy, and you'll be dragging the bottom pretty often. So 1/4 ounce is what you want to go for. And you know what? Most people say pink for pink salmon. I personally find that's not necessarily the case. You can use chartreuse. You can even use just plain silver spoons and spinners, and they work just as well. So I got some, here we go. So we got some Blue Fox chartreuse blade on here, and I think this will work pretty well. So one thing to note, in the Fraser River, in the Tidal Fraser River, you have to use a single barbless hook. This particular lure comes with a treble hook, so you need to remove that. The package also comes with a single hook beside it, so you have to remove the treble and put the single hook on it, single barbless. I personally have my own preferences of hooks I want to use instead of using the ones that come with the package, the lure package. So lately, I've been trying, where did I put it? Oh, right here. So VMC, Texet Sidewash Open Eye spoon hooks. This is what I'm going to be using this year. So with hooks, this is very, very, very important. You spend all the money on reels and rods. This is what's going to be connecting you to the fish. So you want something that can stay very, very sharp for a very long time. A lot of times that hook is going to be bouncing off rocks in the Fraser, and it can get damaged. A cheap hook can get damaged pretty easily. So invest some money on hooks. Try to find hooks that you find that will stay pretty sharp, and it doesn't flex as well that much. So this one here has a pretty strong shank, so it doesn't bend that much as well. I've seen hooks that are too thin. Thinner hooks can get that hook into the fish a lot more easily. But if it bends too easily, when you're fighting the fish can come off pretty easily. I found that has happened to me in the past. So definitely find your preference when it comes to hooks, and don't just use the hooks that come out from the lure package. Try some of these ones out. So this is I just got these ones this year, and I'm feeling good about these. So VMC Texet Sidewash Open Eye hooks. That's what I'm going to be using. Jig Geek has been sending me some products to try out. So these, let's check these out. So these are 3/8 ounce jig heads, and they come with on these pink, I guess, grub jigs, right? Let's open one of these up and take a look at it. Yeah, these will work really well. So if you prefer to twitch jigs, so I think this will work pretty well. Yeah, you know what? This is probably my favorite hooks. I think this is called sickle hooks, and I like the bend, angular bend over here, and the fish definitely stay on there pretty well. And they are very, very sharp hooks as well. So these jigs are fantastic. So Jig Geek, the paint on these jig heads doesn't really come off. You can smash these against rocks, and they stay on very, very well, unlike some of the other products I've seen in the past. Yeah, so this will work pretty well. So you would just cast this out, and you would just jig it on the way back, and they work very well for pink salmon as well. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. That's all you need for pink salmon fishing. It's it's this fishery. Like I said, there's lots of fish coming back. So let's talk about when you should be fishing for these fish. Okay, so in the next 2 weeks, the best time to fish for these fish is during the incoming tide. When the tides start coming, these fish will get pushed upstream, so they're coming with the tide, and you can actually see them in the water. They'll be finning, they'll be jumping, and that's when you should start catching them. I find that starting around 3 hours before the tide peaks up until the peak of the tide is the best time. But don't neglect the time after the peak tide as well. Sometimes the first 2 hours of the outgoing tide, the fish can get a little confused. They actually start going downstream, and they actually start circling in the area, and that's when they will bite really well as well. So so this fishery is not really a first light or last light fishery, but it's entirely tidal dependent. So if you time the tide right, check the tide table. If your timing is right, you should be getting into fish. The best time, typically the peak of the run is around 10th of September. Okay, So I've caught them as late as early October, but generally around the 10th to 15th is when you see that massive schools of fish coming into the river. A few things you should know before taking part in this fishery: you need to have your saltwater fishing license and your salmon stamp if you decide to keep fish. There is a daily quota. There's 4 fish per day, and like I said earlier, with 6 million fish coming back, it is quite a bit below historic average. And just be a little mindful and keep what you can. Only keep what you can eat. And if you're practicing catching and releasing pink salmon, moderation is key as well. We want to make sure we get as many of these fish back to the spawning ground as possible, so we can have this fishery again in 2 years from now. It's in everyone's best interest to fish responsibly. There are other salmon species running through the Fraser River during this time. We got Chinook salmon going through right now. We got coho salmon, becoming more and more abundant in the coming weeks. And there are also sockeye salmon going through the river as well. So these species have to be released. You can only keep pink salmon. Please release these fish with care. I like to carry a catch and release net like this Moby net right here. So when you bring the fish in, you're netting the fish, and if it's a pink salmon, then you can identify it. If it's pink salmon, then you can bring them to land if you decide to keep it. If it's a species that you need to release or you want to release, then you can do so in the water very safely. So this ensures that the mortality of the released fish is very, very low. Again, it is in our best interest to do that. This fishery, I can tell you that behind the scene, it has been very, very challenging to get this fishery opened. Simply because there's so much concern on bycatching other species of salmon, which are vulnerable compared to pink salmon. So hopefully everyone can comply to all these regulations, and so in 2 years from now, we can all enjoy this again. I'm looking forward to taking my kids down there to do this. The last time I did this was when my oldest son, Elliot, and he was 3-year-old at the time, back in 2015. And that was a very memorable trip when we got to do that. I haven't had a chance doing this with Eric yet, so hopefully in the next 2 weeks, I'll be able to go down there and as a family, and we can show him the fun of catching some pink salmon. If you have any questions regarding this fishery, don't hesitate to leave a comment on the bottom and ask me. I'm always happy to answer your questions. There are a lot of other videos and articles available on our YouTube channel and website that you can check out on the pink salmon fishery as well. Please check it out. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button and click on that notification bell. I would really appreciate the support so we can keep bringing you content like this. And happy pink salmon fishing, and until next time, good luck fishing.